Welcome to The Explainer. We need to talk about April 3rd, 2026, because on this day, one single event in the skies over Iran kicked off a chain reaction, a series of dominoes that fell one by one, pushing the Middle East and really the entire world right to the brink of a much wider war. We're going to unpack how it all went down.
This is the kind of question that's usually just a hypothetical, right? A war game scenario. But on this day, it stopped being a theory and became terrifyingly real. It was the spark in a tinderbox, and for hours, the whole world just held its breath, wondering if this was the moment everything was about to spin completely out of control. So to really get a handle on just how serious this day was, we have to start at the beginning. We have to start with that US F-15 fighter jet falling out of the sky over Iran. The way this story broke, it was just fragments, coming in piece by piece. First, it's an overnight claim from Iranian state media, something you might just brush off as propaganda. But then the confirmations start to trickle in. Drip, drip, drip. The White House says the president's been briefed. Then this incredible video pops up on social media, a rescue mission already underway. And finally, you get a U.S. official going on the record. The fog of war starts to clear, and what we see is pretty grim. And amidst all the high-stakes politics and military strategy, it really all boils down to this. Two pilots, somewhere in hostile territory. Their fate became the single biggest unanswered question, driving this whole crisis forward. But here's the thing you gotta remember. This incident, it didn't just happen in a vacuum. Nope. It was just the latest and most dangerous move in this rapid-fire tit-for-tat escalation, where angry words were being followed almost immediately by real, destructive action. President Trump's message on social media was, well, it was crystal clear. He's openly threatening to hit civilian infrastructure. That's not some kind of coded military language. It's a direct threat to escalate the conflict by targeting things that would impact the daily lives of millions of regular Iranians. And right on cue, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu backed him up, making it clear this was a coordinated effort. But he also gave us a look at the strategy, claiming they'd already wiped out 70% of Iran's steel production. So this wasn't just a military war, it was economic warfare too. Iran's response? Total defiance. Their foreign minister basically sent the message, "We will not break." It really doubles down on this idea that these kinds of attacks, instead of forcing a surrender, would just make the country dig in its heels even more. It's that classic rally round the flag effect when you're under attack. And these were not empty threats. Soon after the warnings, the B-1 bridge, a key piece of infrastructure, was hit. And the tragic part? It was struck while civilians were gathered nearby to celebrate a national holiday, Nature Day. 8 people were killed. A day of celebration instantly turned into one of mourning, proving just how lethal the reality behind all the tough talk had become. Now, you might be thinking, this conflict is just contained to one region, right? Well, not so fast. The consequences are already rippling out across the entire globe, hitting people's wallets and disrupting daily life thousands of miles away from any front line. For most of us, the most immediate hit was right at the gas pump. The price of U.S. crude oil shot up to $112 a barrel. And a spike like that, it directly impacts the cost of, well, pretty much everything. And just to put that number into perspective for you, the price has more than doubled since the start of the year. This isn't just a normal market fluctuation. It is a direct economic shockwave from the fighting and from Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, which is absolutely critical for global oil supply. And believe me, this pain is global. In Pakistan, fuel prices jumped over 50%. In Bangladesh, they're cutting work hours just to save power. Iran's neighbors in the Gulf are now getting hit with direct attacks on their own water and energy plants. And it's even hitting your dinner table, with the UN reporting that global food prices are climbing higher and higher. But look, beyond all the oil prices and strategic calculations, the true cost of any conflict, as always, is measured in human lives. The death toll is now over 3,000. That's more than 1,900 people in Iran from U.S. and Israeli strikes, another 1,300 in Lebanon, plus casualties among Israeli civilians and American service members. Every single one of those numbers was a person, a family, a community, just torn apart by all this. And then there's the crushing economic cost for regular people. This quote from Gohar Ali, a driver in Pakistan, it's just heartbreaking. He's talking about how rising fuel costs might force him to quit the job that feeds his family of 5. For millions of people, this war isn't some distant headline. It's a desperate daily struggle just to survive.
The war is just twisting the very fabric of society. I mean, think about this. In Tehran, you have families trying to cling to a cherished tradition, celebrating Nature Day in parks while smoke is literally rising in the distance. And at the same time, in Dubai, Christians are being forced to cancel Easter services, a cornerstone of their faith, moving everything online because it's just not safe.
And then there's this, which is just absolutely horrifying. Amnesty International is reporting that Iran is now recruiting children as young as 12 into its paramilitary force. Eyewitnesses have seen these kids at checkpoints, some of them armed with rifles. This isn't just breaking international law. It is a devastating war crime, putting the most vulnerable people imaginable directly in harm's way.
So with tensions at a total boiling point and the human and economic costs just skyrocketing, is there any hope? Is there any way out of this? Is an off-ramp even possible anymore?
You know, amid all the drums of war, you can hear these faint calls for peace. The Pope made a direct appeal for dialogue. Over 100 legal experts have come out and condemned the strikes. And maybe most importantly, a former top Iranian diplomat has actually floated a potential deal. Basically, limit the nuclear program in exchange for ending sanctions. It's the ghost of an old deal, but it's a voice for diplomacy in a sea of war cries. So, as the world is watching these downed jets and bombed bridges and spiraling costs, it all really comes down to this one urgent question. In a conflict that's gotten this heated, with so much on the line,